0002 a.m., July 21st, 2019. Room 7. Cavite, Philippines. Blood on tile, thick, spreading. A utility knife rests on the quilt, its blade catching the fluorescent light. Against the vanity, a man named Rico slumps with his hand pressed to his side. Shattered light bulbs crunch beneath his weight. His breath comes in wet, ragged pulls. Liam Foster backs into the corner. His hands won't stop shaking. The blood on his fingers feels warm, then cold, then like it belongs to someone else entirely. Maya is screaming. Or maybe she stopped screaming minutes ago. Time has become unreliable. The smell fills the room. Iron. Hairspray. Something chemical from the spilled bottles on the floor. It coats the back of Liam's throat like a warning he received too late. 8 days earlier, everything was different. 3:12 a.m., July 14th, 2019. Ninoy Aquino International Airport, Terminal 3. Rain tapped against the taxi's roof as Liam stared at his phone. 24 hours without sleep. 2 red-eye flights. 16 months of messages compressed into 3 lines on his screen. "I thought you'd be here," the last text read. Then a new message arrived. Unknown number. A grainy photo of a hotel room. A towel twisted on the bed. A smear of something dark near the pillow. His palm went cold. Across the street, a man in a leather jacket watched Liam's reflection in the glass. The man's phone buzzed once, then twice. The message: "He's here." Liam didn't notice. He was too busy believing the story he'd been told, too busy believing that love, even mediated by screens, could be real. He had no idea that someone else was watching, that someone else was waiting, that within 8 days, he would be standing in a room that smelled like blood, watching a man die on the floor. Welcome to True Crime Story 247. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your continued support. Stay tuned for daily true crime updates. Don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Liam Foster came 8,000 miles for love. He found something else entirely. He found a woman who wasn't who she claimed to be. He found a room filled with secrets. He found men who wanted money he didn't have. And in the end, he found out exactly what happens when desperation meets deception in a country where he didn't speak the language, didn't know the rules, and didn't understand that he had been marked from the moment he bought his plane ticket. But before the blood, before the knife, before the screaming and the sirens and the blue water drum behind the pension house, there was a lonely man in Seattle who thought he'd finally found someone who wanted him back. This is his story, and it does not end well. To understand how Liam Foster ended up in that blood-soaked room in Cavite, you have to understand the man he was before. You have to understand the hollow. Liam was born in 1981 in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place where everyone knew your father's name and your grandfather's name and the exact plot of land your family had owned since before the interstate came through. His father, Robert Foster, worked 32 years at the same manufacturing plant. His mother, June, taught 3rd grade at the elementary school 2 blocks from their house. They were good people, quiet people, the kind who showed love through packed lunches and oil changes and showing up to every single baseball game, even the ones where Liam sat on the bench. Liam was never exceptional. He knew this about himself. He made decent grades, had a few friends, dated a girl named Christine through most of high school, lost his virginity to her in the back of his father's truck, and then watched her leave for college in California while he stayed behind to help his dad after his mother's first stroke. That was 1999. Liam was 18 years old. His mother would live another 11 years, each one a little smaller than the last, until she passed quietly in her sleep in 2010. His father followed her 6 years later, not from illness, but from something slower, something that looked like grief, but felt like surrender. The funeral was in October 2016. Liam was 35 years old. He stood at the graveside in a suit that didn't quite fit anymore and realized with a clarity that felt like a physical blow that he was alone. No wife, no children, no siblings except a sister in Portland who called twice a year. His parents were gone. The house he'd grown up in would be sold to pay medical debts, and the life he'd imagined for himself, the one with a family and a purpose, and someone waiting for him at the end of each day, had somehow slipped away while he wasn't paying attention. After the funeral, Liam moved to Seattle. He told himself it was for a fresh start. Really, it was because staying in Ohio felt like drowning in everything he'd lost. He found a job doing IT help desk work, night shifts mostly, the kind of work where you answer phones and reset passwords and never have to look anyone in the eye. His apartment was small. His roommate, a man named Alex, he'd found on Craigslist, was tolerable. They'd known each other 20 years now, more out of inertia than genuine friendship. Alex worked days at a warehouse. They passed each other in the kitchen sometimes, exchanged a few words, lived parallel lives that rarely intersected. On weekends, Liam would sit in his room and read his father's letters. Robert Foster had been a man of few words in person, but he'd written to his son regularly during Liam's brief stint at community college. Practical advice, mostly. How to change a tire, how to balance a checkbook, how to tell if a woman was worth keeping around. Look for kindness, his father wrote in one letter. Everything else fades. Kindness stays. Liam read those letters over and over, searching for something he couldn't name, searching for his father's voice, searching for instructions on how to be less alone. The loneliness was the worst part. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't the kind of thing that made for good stories. It was just there, always like a low hum in the background of his life. He went to work. He came home. He ate microwave dinners and watched television, and sometimes, late at night, he would catch himself talking out loud to no one at all. He was 38 years old when he downloaded the dating app. It was September 2017, almost a year after his father's death. He'd tried dating apps before. They never worked. He wasn't photogenic. He didn't know how to write the kind of bio that made women swipe right. He'd go on a date every few months, sit across from a stranger making small talk, and feel the distance between them like a physical weight. But that September, something shifted. Maybe it was the anniversary of his father's death approaching. Maybe it was the realization that another year had passed and nothing had changed. Whatever it was, he opened the app one night at 2 a.m. between help desk calls, and he saw her, Maya Reyes. The photo showed a woman in her early 30s with dark hair and a quick private smile. She was standing on what looked like a balcony, palm trees visible in the background, the ocean a blue smear behind her. Her profile said she was from Cebu in the Philippines. She was a nursing student. She liked morning coffee and thunderstorms and old movies. Liam sent a message. Something simple. He didn't expect a response. She wrote back within the hour. The first messages were careful, polite. She asked about his work. He asked about her studies. She told him about the hospital where she did her clinical rotations, the long night shifts, the patients who sometimes died and the ones who sometimes didn't. Her English was precise but warmly accented with idioms that made him smile. She called him my dear in one message. In another, she wrote that talking to him felt like finding a warm place in a cold room. By November, they were messaging every day. She told him about her life. Her parents had died when she was young, she said, a car accident. She'd been raised by an aunt who had since passed away. Now she was alone except for her sister and her sister's son, a boy named Nino who was 7 years old and dreamed of becoming a teacher. Maya's sister had left for work in Saudi Arabia, she explained. The money was better there. So Maya was raising Nino herself, working night shifts at the hospital while studying for her nursing exams, trying to give the boy the kind of stable life she'd never had. Liam recognized something in her story, the struggle, the sacrifice. The way she talked about Nino reminded him of the way his own parents had talked about him, with a fierce protective love that asked for nothing in return. By December, she was calling him mi amor. Playful at first, then softer, then with an urgency that made his chest tight. The first time she asked for money, it was small. $50. Her phone had broken, she said, and she needed it for work. Liam sent it without hesitation. What was $50? Less than he spent on takeout in a week. The second request came a few weeks later. $200. Nino had a school fee that was overdue, and they were threatening to hold him back. Liam sent it. Then came the hospital bills. Maya's own health, she said, a problem with her kidneys that required medication. The medication was expensive. The hospital wanted payment up front. She hated asking. She was so embarrassed. But she didn't know who else to turn to. Liam understood. He'd watched his own mother drown in medical debt. He knew how it felt to be trapped by a body that wouldn't cooperate and a system that didn't care. He wired the money, $300, then $400, then more. Friends would later tell investigators that Liam became obsessed during this period. That's not quite right. Obsession implies something unhealthy, something out of control. What Liam felt was simpler. He felt useful. For the first time in years, someone needed him. Someone was waiting for his messages. Someone called him mi amor and meant it, or so he believed. In February 2018, Maya sent him a photograph that made him cry. It showed a small bundle of children's clothes laid out on a bed. A blue shirt with a cartoon character on it, tiny pants, small socks folded neatly. The note attached read, "When I work extra shifts, I save money to buy things for Nino. He dreams of being a teacher someday. Thank you for helping us. Because of you, he will have a chance." Liam looked at that photograph for a long time. He thought about his father's letters. He thought about kindness staying. He wired another payment. By spring 2018, they had moved to video calls. Maya's face on his screen, pixelated sometimes but real. She would call late at night, her time, which was early morning, his time. She'd be tired from her shift, still in scrubs sometimes, her hair pulled back, her smile small but genuine. They talked about the future, about what it would be like to meet in person, about Nino and whether Liam would like him, about the possibility, never stated directly but always present, of building something together. Liam began to imagine a different life, a life where he wasn't alone, a life where he had a family again, a life with Maya and Nino, in a small house somewhere, maybe in the Philippines, maybe in the States. It didn't matter. What mattered was having someone to come home to. What mattered was belonging. If you're starting to see where this is headed, if you're beginning to feel the shape of what's coming, take a moment right now, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this story, because what happens next is something no one saw coming. Least of all Liam. Not everyone in Liam's life was blind to what was happening. Alex, his roommate, noticed the late-night calls. He noticed Liam staring at his phone during dinner, smiling at messages, typing responses with a focus that seemed almost desperate. One night in March 2018, Alex sat down across from him with a beer and asked directly. "Who is she?" Liam told him, showed him photos, explained about Cebu, about the nursing program, about Nino and the hospital bills and the future they were planning together. Alex listened. He didn't interrupt. When Liam finished, Alex took a long drink of his beer and said the words that would haunt both of them later. "She's too good to be true, man. People lie on the internet all the time, especially to lonely guys who send money." Liam felt his face flush. "It's not like that." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen her. We video chat. She's real." "I'm not saying she's not real. I'm saying the situation is too perfect. Beautiful woman, sad story, kid to take care of, always needs money for some emergency. You know how these things work, right? You've seen the news, romance scams, they target guys like..." Alex stopped himself, But Liam heard the rest of the sentence anyway. Guys like you? Lonely, desperate, willing to believe. You don't know her, Liam said. You don't know what we have. Alex raised his hands. Okay, I'm just saying. Be careful, that's all. Liam's sister June called a few weeks later, having heard about Maya through their occasional conversations. June was more gentle than Alex, but her concern was the same. Just send me copies of everything, she said. The messages, the money transfers, her photos. Let me keep them somewhere safe, just in case. In case of what? In case this doesn't turn out the way you hope. Liam did send the copies. He gathered screenshots and wire receipts and photos into a folder and emailed it to June. But he did it to prove her wrong, not to protect himself. He was certain. He was absolutely certain that Maya was real, that their love was real, that everything would work out. He told himself he was rescuing someone. He told himself this was what his father would have wanted. He told himself that love, real love, sometimes required faith. What he didn't tell himself, what he couldn't admit, even in the darkest hours of his night shifts, was that he needed Maya to be real, more than he needed anything else in the world. Because if she wasn't real, then neither was the future he'd built in his head. And without that future, he had nothing to come home to. Nothing at all. In April 2019, everything changed. The video call came at an unusual hour, early evening in Seattle, which meant it was morning in the Philippines. Maya looked tired. More tired than usual. Her eyes were red, her voice thick like she'd been crying. What's wrong? Liam asked. Are you okay? Is Nino okay? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she said the words that collapsed his chest and rebuilt it at the same time. I'm pregnant. It's ours. Liam couldn't speak. He stared at the pixelated face on his screen and felt something crack open inside him, a feeling he hadn't expected, a feeling he'd given up on years ago. Joy. How? He finally managed. We haven't even met in person. Maya laughed, but it was a sad laugh. We met, remember, in January when I came to Seoul for the conference. You flew there. We had 3 days. Liam did remember. Sort of. There had been plans for a meeting in Seoul. Maya had a nursing conference there, she'd said. Liam had looked at flights, but the cost was prohibitive, and then Maya had said she couldn't get the time off anyway, and the plans had fallen through. But now, listening to Maya, he wondered if he was misremembering. His memory had been unreliable lately. The night shifts, the loneliness, the constant messaging had blurred everything together. Maybe they had met. Maybe he had forgotten. I'm scared, Maya said. I don't know what to do. If people find out, if my supervisor finds out, I could lose my position. And Nino, what will happen to Nino? I'll come, Liam said without thinking. I'll fly there. We'll figure this out together. Maya's face changed. Relief, maybe, or something else. You would do that? You would come? I'll buy the ticket tomorrow. She cried then, or seemed to cry. The video quality made it hard to be certain, but her voice broke, and she whispered, Mi amor, like a prayer, and Liam felt, for the first time in years, like a man with a purpose. He bought the ticket the next day, round trip to Manila. He would arrive on July 13th and stay for 3 weeks. He withdrew money from his savings account, the money he'd been putting away for a house, down payment that he no longer believed he'd ever use, $300 in cash, hidden in a passport sleeve, the rest accessible through his debit card. He told Alex he was going on vacation. He told June he was meeting a friend. He didn't tell anyone the truth because the truth felt too fragile to share, too precious, too easily broken by doubt. In his mind, he saw it all clearly. He would arrive in the Philippines. Maya would meet him at the airport. They would figure out the pregnancy together. Maybe he would stay. Maybe he would bring her back to the States. Maybe they would raise the child with Nino, build a family from the pieces of their broken lives. He had a picture in his head, a future, something to live for. He had no idea that the picture was already cracked, That the future he imagined existed only in his head? That he was walking into something far worse than heartbreak? He had no idea that within a week of landing he would watch a man die. And it would be his fault. The problems started small. So small that Liam almost didn't notice them. In May 2019, a month after learning about the pregnancy, Maya's calls became irregular. She'd miss their scheduled video chats, then apologize, with elaborate explanations. Her supervisor had changed her shifts. The hospital was understaffed. Nino was sick, and she'd been up all night. The reasons were always plausible. They were always delivered with such sincere exhaustion that Liam felt guilty for even noticing. Then came the photographs. Maya sent selfies regularly, little glimpses of her day that Liam treasured. But something about the photos from May and June felt different. The lighting was wrong. The backgrounds didn't match the places she'd described. In one photo, she was wearing a shirt he'd never seen before, standing in a room that looked nothing like her small apartment in Cebu. He mentioned it once, casually. "Is that a new place?" Maya's response came quickly. Too quickly. "My friend's apartment. I'm staying with her while they fix my building's water main." Liam accepted this. What else could he do? He was 8,000 miles away. He had no way to verify anything. And he wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. The voice on the phone was another thing. Maya had a distinctive voice, clear and warm with a slight accent that made certain words sound like music. But during some calls, especially late-night calls, her voice sounded different. Raspier. Older? Like someone who had been smoking for years, though Maya claimed she never touched cigarettes. "Are you getting sick?" he asked once. "Just tired," she said. "The pregnancy is exhausting." He wanted to ask more. He wanted to push. But something stopped him. Maybe fear. Maybe the suspicion, buried deep where he couldn't acknowledge it, that asking questions would reveal answers he couldn't survive. Then Maya disappeared. For an entire week in late May, she didn't respond to his messages. His calls went straight to voicemail. He sent emails, texts, WhatsApp messages, even tried reaching her through the hospital's public number. Nothing. Liam didn't sleep. He barely ate. He sat at his desk during his night shifts and refreshed his phone every 30 seconds, willing a message to appear. He began Googling things he'd never Googled before. Romance scams, catfishing, how to tell if someone online is real. The articles were devastating. They described exactly what was happening to him. The beautiful woman from a foreign country, the sad backstory, the requests for money that started small and grew, the isolation from friends and family who expressed concern, the emotional manipulation that made the victim complicit in their own deception. But then, on the 7th day, Maya reappeared. Her message was full of apologies. The hospital had confiscated her phone during a policy change, she said. New rules about personal devices on the ward. She'd been unable to contact anyone. She'd been so worried about him, about them, about the baby. She sent photos of hospital corridors as proof. Screenshots of scheduling software that showed her shifts. A picture of Nino doing homework, looking up at the camera with a gap-toothed smile. Liam felt relief wash over him like warm water. She was real. The situation was real. His fear had been paranoia, nothing more. He rationalized everything. She lives in a place with bad infrastructure. Phones get taken. Things are different there. I'm projecting my own insecurities onto her. He pushed the doubt down deep and locked the door. On June 5th, 2019, at 4:07 a.m., Seattle time, Liam received a voice message that changed everything. He was at work, staring at a help desk ticket about a password reset when his phone buzzed. A voice message from Maya, longer than usual. He put in his earbuds and pressed play. The audio was slightly echoing, like she was recording in a bathroom or stairwell. He could hear ambient noise in the background. Traffic, maybe. Or people talking far away. "Mi amor," Maya's voice said. and it was her voice this time, clear and warm, unmistakably hers. "I'm sorry I've been so distant. Things have been harder than I can explain." There was a pause. He could hear her breathing. "I need you," she continued. "I need you to come, please. I know we said July, but I don't know if I can wait that long. I'm so scared, Liam. I'm scared of doing this alone." Another pause. And then her laugh, small and precise, the same laugh he'd heard 100 times on their video calls. "Come soon. Come as fast as you can. I'll be waiting." Liam played the message 10 times. Each time he felt the same thing. Certainty. Whatever doubts he'd harbored, whatever fears had kept him awake at night, they dissolved in the sound of her voice. She was real, she needed him, and he would not let her down. He looked at his ticket to Manila. Departure July the 13th. 5 weeks away. He almost changed it, almost bought an earlier flight. But his savings were depleted and the ticket change fees were astronomical. He would have to wait. The longest 5 weeks of his life. July 13th, 2019. 11:02 p.m. Liam's taxi pulled up to the pension house in Cavite. The air was thick and humid, heavy with the smell of wet asphalt and something else. Exhaust, maybe? Or rotting vegetation? The streets were darker than he'd expected. The buildings crowded close together like they were keeping secrets from each other. Maya wasn't there to meet him. She'd said she would be. During their last video call 3 days ago, she'd promised to wait at the airport with Nino. They would have dinner together. They would finally be a family. But when Liam landed at Ninoy Aquino, he waited for 2 hours at the arrivals gate and she never came. He called her number. No answer. He texted. No response. Eventually, he pulled out the address she'd sent him a week earlier. Room 7. Pension house in Cavite. An hour south of Manila. She'd said it was temporary. A place she was staying while her apartment was being fumigated. She'd given him detailed instructions for finding it. He hadn't questioned why she couldn't meet him at the airport. He was too tired to question anything anymore. The pension house was small, wedged between a sari-sari store and what looked like an auto repair shop. The front desk was unmanned. A small sign directed guests to take their keys from a low wooden bowl near the entrance. Room 7's key was there just like Maya said it would be. A brass key with a plastic tag, the number written in faded marker. Liam climbed the narrow stairs. His carry-on bumped against the walls. The hallway smelled like mildew and cooking oil and something floral, air freshener maybe, trying and failing to mask the decay. He found room 7 at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single bare bulb. But there was other light too. A ring light, the kind used for photography or video calls, leaned against an armchair like a piece of abandoned equipment. Its circular glow cast strange shadows on the walls. A vanity table sat near the window. It was covered with things. Hair extensions in different colors. Makeup palettes, their powders smeared and cracked. False eyelashes. Bottles of something that might have been perfume or might have been something else entirely. A laptop hummed on a small desk. Its screen was dark but not off. Liam could see thumbnails reflected in the glass, small rectangles of color that might have been photos or videos. And on the bed, scattered like discarded playing cards, were photographs. Liam picked one up. His hands were already trembling, though he didn't know why yet. The photograph showed a woman with heavy stage makeup, her face contorted in simulated pleasure, her body positioned in a way that left nothing to imagination. He looked at the face. He looked at it for a long time. It was Maya. Or it was someone who looked exactly like Maya. The same dark hair, the same quick smile. But the expression was different, professional, practiced. The smile of someone who was working. In the corner of the photograph, in block letters, was a name. LOLA BLAZE. Liam dropped the photo. He turned to the laptop. His hands were shaking badly now, but he managed to touch the trackpad, to wake the screen. Thumbnails loaded. Dozens of them, hundreds. Small video clips, each one a few minutes long, each one showing the same woman in various states of undress, various positions, various acts. The watermark on each video read, Manila Dreams Entertainment. Liam scrolled. His breath was coming fast now, shallow and harsh. Each thumbnail was worse than the last. Each one showed the woman he loved doing things he couldn't process, things he couldn't reconcile with the nursing student who cared for her nephew and dreamed of a better life. At the bottom of the screen, there was a folder. It was labeled Vince Deliverables. Liam opened it. Inside were spreadsheets, names and dates and dollar amounts. His name was there. Liam Foster, Seattle, USA. Next to it, a column of figures. Every wire transfer he'd ever sent, every payment, every act of love converted into currency. 11:47 p.m., July 13th, 2019. Liam sat on the edge of the bed with the laptop open in front of him. The thumbnails glowed. The spreadsheet numbers burned into his vision. His hands had stopped shaking. They had gone past shaking into something worse, something numb. He heard the door creak open behind him. Where in the world are you watching this story unfold? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, if you're still with me, comment, "No, I'm still here." I want to see who's truly invested in finding out what happens when Liam turns around. Who's invested in learning what Maya has to say for herself. Because the truth, when it comes, will be worse than anything he imagined. Liam turned. Maya stood in the doorway. But she wasn't the Maya from his screen. She wasn't the tired nursing student with the soft voice and the worried eyes. She was smaller somehow, harder. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and her face, without the soft lighting of their video calls, looked older, lined with something that might have been exhaustion or might have been something else. She saw the laptop open in his hands. She saw the thumbnails on the screen, and her expression didn't change. Not surprise, not shame. Just a tired, practical assessment of the situation. "You shouldn't have looked," she said. Her voice had an edge Liam had never heard before. "Those are the files for Vince." Liam stared at her. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His entire world had just collapsed into rubble, and she was talking about files, about someone named Vince. "What is this?" he finally managed. His voice sounded foreign to him, thin, breaking. "What is any of this?" Maya stepped into the room. She closed the door behind her with a click that sounded final. She walked to the vanity table and began gathering the photographs, stacking them into a neat pile with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. "It's work," she said simply. "What did you think it was?" "You said you were a nurse." "I was a nurse. I studied nursing. I did clinicals, but nursing doesn't pay, Liam. Not here. Not enough to feed a child, to pay for school, to keep a roof over our heads." She held up one of the photographs. Liam flinched away from it. "This pays," she continued. "It's staged. It's acting. It's a job. I'm not ashamed of it. You lied to me." The words came out as an accusation and a plea at the same time. "You said you were pregnant. You said it was ours." Something flickered across Maya's face then, the first crack in her composure. She set the photographs down and looked at him directly. "I did what I had to do." "What you had to do? You told me we were having a baby. I bought a plane ticket. I came here to be with you to start a family, and none of it was real?" Maya laughed. It was a brittle sound. Nothing like the warm laugh from her voice messages. "What's real, Liam? You sent money because you wanted to feel like a hero. I took money because I needed to survive. We both got something out of it." "I didn't get anything. I got lies." "You got hope." Maya's voice softened slightly. "You got someone to talk to, someone to care about. For 16 months, you had a purpose. Wasn't that worth something?" Liam felt the rage building in his chest. It started in his stomach and climbed upward, hot and acidic. She was standing there, this stranger who wore Maya's face, and she was telling him that his love, his hope, His desperate belief in something better was a transaction, a service rendered. The pregnancy, he said, his voice shaking now. Was any of it true? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him. It was a medical report, dated May 9th, 2019. The words blurred and swam, but he made out enough. Positive pregnancy test. Ultrasound scheduled. I was pregnant, Maya said quietly. In April, when I told you. I wasn't lying about that. Liam looked up at her. Was? I lost it in June. I don't know why. These things happen. She took the paper back, folded it carefully, returned it to her bag. I thought about telling you. But you'd already bought the ticket. And I thought maybe if you came, if you saw me, if we were together in person. She trailed off. Her eyes went to the window, to the darkness beyond. I thought maybe we could start over. Make it real. Liam stared at her. He wanted to feel sympathy. He wanted to understand. But all he could see was the laptop screen, the thumbnails, the spreadsheet with his name, and his money lined up like evidence of his own stupidity. Did you ever love me? He asked. The question sounded pathetic even to his own ears. A drowning man asking the ocean why it was wet. Maya looked at him for a long time. When she answered, her voice was neither kind nor cruel, just honest. Maybe. I don't know what love is anymore. I know what survival is. I know what work is. I know that you were kind to me and I wasn't always kind back. But love? She shrugged. Love is a luxury, Liam. People like you get to have it. People like me learn to live without. The silence that followed was absolute. Liam felt something inside him crack and fall away. Not his heart. His heart had broken hours ago, when he first saw the photographs. This was something else, something deeper. His faith in the world, his belief that things could get better. His hope. He stood up slowly. His legs felt like they belonged to someone else. He walked past Maya, past the vanity table with its scattered evidence of her other life, and out into the narrow hallway. Where are you going? Maya called after him. He didn't answer. He couldn't. He walked to the end of the hallway, down the stairs, out into the humid night. He found a wall in the narrow alley beside the pension house. Cement, cool and damp from the recent rain. He pressed his forehead against it. And then he began to slam his head into the wall, over and over. As if he could knock loose, the images burned into his brain. The thumbnails, the spreadsheet, the woman he loved standing in a doorway and telling him that love was a luxury. The pain was clarifying. It was real in a way that nothing else had been real for months. He kept hitting until he felt blood running down his face, warm and wet and somehow comforting. He stopped. He leaned against the wall. He pulled out his phone. 2:33 a.m., July 14th, 2019. Alex answered on the fourth ring. His voice was groggy, confused. Liam, what time is it there? I found her, Liam said. His voice was flat. Dead. She's not who she said she was. What do you mean? What happened? Liam told him. Not everything. He couldn't bring himself to describe everything. But enough. The photographs, the videos, the name LOLA BLAZE in block letters, the spreadsheet with his payments listed like inventory. Alex was silent for a long time when he finished. Then he said the words Liam had been waiting to hear. I told you, get out of there, come home. I can't. Why not? Liam couldn't explain. He didn't understand it himself. He couldn't leave. Not yet. Not like this. If he left now, it would mean that everything he'd believed was a lie, that the last 16 months had been nothing but a long, slow con, that he was exactly the kind of pathetic, lonely fool that Alex had warned him about. He needed something, an explanation, an apology, a moment of genuine connection that would prove at least part of it had been real. I need to understand, he said. I need to know why. Liam, listen to me. It doesn't matter why she used you, she lied to you, Whatever reasons she has, they don't change what she did. Come home before something worse happens. But Liam wasn't listening anymore. He was thinking about Maya's face in the doorway, the crack in her composure when he asked about the pregnancy, the medical report she'd shown him. Maybe there was more to the story. Maybe she was a victim too. Maybe if he could just understand, he could salvage something from the wreckage. He hung up on Alex. He went back inside, and that decision, that single, desperate, foolish decision to stay, would cost a man his life. Here's a question for you. One that has no easy answer. If you discovered that everything you believed, every late-night conversation, every whispered "I love you," every dollar you sent, believing you were helping someone you cared about, was a performance designed to extract money from your loneliness, what would you do? Would you leave? Would you cut your losses, book the next flight home, and spend the rest of your life pretending it never happened? Or would you stay? Would you dig deeper into the wreckage, desperate to salvage some fragment of truth from the rubble? Would you tell yourself there had to be more to the story, that no one could fake that kind of connection, that somewhere beneath the lies there was something real? Liam stayed, and that decision would haunt him for the rest of his life. The hours after his phone call with Alex passed in a blur of confusion and bargaining. Liam sat in the narrow alley beside the pension house until his legs went numb. The blood from his forehead had dried into a crusty smear that made him look like a man who had lost a fight. In a way, he had. When he finally went back inside, Maya was waiting for him. She had cleaned up room 7. The photographs were gone, stacked somewhere out of sight. The laptop was closed. The ring light had been moved to a corner. Its accusing glow dimmed. She sat on the edge of the bed with her hands folded in her lap, and when Liam walked through the door, she looked at him with an expression that was neither guilty nor defiant. "Just tired." "You came back?" she said. "I don't know why." "I do." Maya stood and walked toward him, stopping close enough that he could smell her perfume. Something floral, synthetic. Not the scent he had imagined during all those late-night calls. "You came back because you need this to mean something. You need all that money, all that time, all that hope to have been worth it." Liam flinched. She was right. He hated that she was right. "Sit down," Maya said. "Let me tell you the truth. The real truth. Then you can decide what you want to do." She led him to the armchair in the corner, the one where the ring light had been leaning. She sat across from him on a small wooden stool, their knees almost touching, and she began to talk. What she told him over the next 2 hours would complicate everything Liam thought he understood. It wouldn't excuse what she had done, but it would explain it. And somehow that explanation made everything worse. Maya Reyes was born in 1987 in a village outside Cebu City. Her parents were farmers, subsistence level, the kind who measured wealth in bags of rice and prayed for rain in the dry season. They died when she was 11 years old. Not in a car accident, as she had told Liam. In a flood. The same flood that killed 47 other people in their village and washed away everything her family had ever owned. Maya and her younger sister were sent to live with relatives in the city. An aunt who resented the extra mouths to feed. An uncle who looked at Maya in ways that made her sleep with a chair wedged against her bedroom door. She ran away at 15, lived on the streets for a while, found work in a factory that made electronics for export, 12-hour shifts for wages that barely covered food, and a shared room in a boarding house with 6 other girls. At 18, she got pregnant. The father was a co-worker who disappeared the moment she told him. She considered keeping the baby. She couldn't. The clinic was dirty, and the woman who performed the procedure had hands that shook, but Maya survived. Barely. Her sister was luckier. Maria found a husband, a decent man who worked on a fishing boat. They had a son together, Nino. For a few years, Maya thought her sister had escaped the gravity that pulled their family toward disaster. Then Maria's husband drowned at sea. His body was never recovered. The insurance company refused to pay. Maria, broken by grief and debt, left for Saudi Arabia to work as a domestic helper. She sent money home when she could. Maya became Nino's primary caregiver. That was 2014. Nino was 4 years old. Maya was 27 with no education, no skills, and a child to raise. She tried legitimate work, waitressing, cleaning, a brief stint at a call center that fired her for her accent. Nothing paid enough. Nothing came close. Then she met Vince. Vincent Reyes was no relation despite the shared surname. He was a businessman, he said, an entrepreneur. He managed talent for the digital age. He saw potential in Maya. Not her intelligence or her kindness or her determination, though she had all three. He saw her face, her body, her desperation. It's just work, Vince told her during their first meeting. Acting, performance. No different than being in movies, except the movies are shorter and the audience is specific somehow. Maya said no, at first. But Nino needed school fees. The landlord was threatening eviction. Her sister's remittances had stopped coming. And when Maya finally reached Maria by phone, Maria was crying about an employer who had taken her passport and wouldn't let her leave. So Maya said yes. The work was what you might expect. Short videos mostly, sometimes photographs, sometimes live streams where men from America and Europe paid to watch and type comments. She adopted a stage name, LOLA BLAZE, and a persona to match. Confident, sexy, available. Everything she didn't feel but had learned to perform. The money was better than anything she had ever earned. Enough to pay for Nino's school. Enough to rent a small apartment with running water. Enough to send money to Maria, who had finally escaped her employer, but was stranded in Riyadh with no way home. Maya told herself it was temporary. She told herself she would save enough money to start over, to move somewhere no one knew her, to give Nino a life free from the stain of her choices. But the industry doesn't let you go that easily. Vince took a percentage of everything she earned. 30%, then 40%, then more as his expenses grew and his accounting became creative. He controlled which clients she worked with, which shoots she appeared in, which live streams she hosted. He had her sign contracts she didn't fully understand, documents that gave him rights to her images, her name, her digital presence. When Maya tried to push back, when she asked questions about where her money was going, Vince introduced her to Rico. He's protection, Vince said, for you, for all my girls, in case clients get too attached or try to find you in person. But Rico wasn't protection. Rico was enforcement. He collected Vince's debts. He made sure the girls stayed in line. He was the fist behind Vince's smile, and everyone who worked for Vince knew what happened to people who tried to leave without permission. Maya had seen it once, a girl named Joy who had saved enough money to disappear. Rico found her in Davao 3 months after she ran. He broke her arm in 2 places. Then he brought her back. After that, Maya stopped thinking about escape. She focused on survival instead, on keeping Nino fed and clothed and in school, on sending money to Maria, on enduring each day until the next one came. Then Liam appeared. She was honest about this part at least. When his message arrived on the dating app, she saw an opportunity. Not for love, for extraction. Vince had taught her well. American men were the best marks, lonely, generous, eager to believe in stories of tragic beauty and noble sacrifice. But something happened that Maya didn't expect. She liked him, not loved. She wasn't capable of that anymore, she said. The industry had scraped that capacity out of her like meat from a shell. But she liked Liam, his kindness, his sincerity, the way he asked about her day and actually listened to the answers, the way he talked about his dead father with a tenderness that made her chest ache. She started looking forward to their calls. Not because of the money, though the money kept coming, because Liam made her feel like a person again. Like Maya, not Lola Blaze. The pregnancy was real. She hadn't expected it. She wasn't even sure who the father was, whether it was one of her clients or one of her occasional encounters with men outside the industry. But when the test came back positive, she made a choice. She decided to believe it was Liam's. I know that doesn't make sense, she told him, her voice quiet in the dim room. We had never met in person, but I wanted it to be yours. I wanted the baby to belong to something good, something clean, not to this life. She told him about the pregnancy because she wanted him to come, because she thought maybe if he was here in person, they could start over. She could tell him the truth. He would be angry, yes, but maybe he would understand. Maybe he would stay anyway. Maybe they could raise the baby together and she could finally escape. Then she lost it. June 15th, 2019. She woke up in the middle of the night with cramps. It felt like knives twisting in her abdomen. By morning, the baby was gone. The clinic gave her pills and told her to rest. She didn't tell Liam. She couldn't. He had already bought his ticket. He was already on his way. She told herself she would explain when he arrived. She told herself he would understand. She told herself a lot of things that she knew even then weren't true. So that's it, Maya said, finishing her story. That's the truth, all of it. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a good person. I lied to you to get money, and then I lied to you to get you here. And now you know everything. She looked at him with eyes that held no hope, no expectation. So what are you going to do? Liam sat in silence for a long time. The armchair felt like it was swallowing him. The room, with its strange equipment and lingering scent of perfume and chemicals, felt like a trap he had walked into, willingly. He thought about his father's letters, about kindness staying, about the woman in front of him who had done terrible things, but maybe had terrible things done to her first. He thought about the money he had sent. The savings account emptied. The house down payment that would never become a house. The future he had imagined that had turned out to be someone else's lie. He thought about Alex's voice on the phone. Get out of there. And then he thought about Nino. A boy with a gap-toothed smile who dreamed of being a teacher. A boy being raised by a woman who sold pieces of herself so he could go to school. I don't know, Liam finally said. I don't know what I'm going to do. Maya nodded. She didn't seem surprised. You can stay here tonight. The bed is clean. Tomorrow we can figure out the rest. Liam didn't argue. He was too tired to argue, too broken to think clearly. He lay down on the bed that had been photographed 100 times for strangers on the internet, and he stared at the ceiling until exhaustion dragged him under. He dreamed of his father, of walking through a flooded field, searching for something he couldn't name, of a woman's laugh echoing off water that rose and rose and rose. When he woke, Maya was gone. A note on the pillow said she had gone to buy breakfast, to give him time to think. But Liam wasn't thinking about breakfast. He was thinking about the laptop, still sitting on the desk, its screen dark, but not dead. He was thinking about the spreadsheet he had seen, the one with his name on it, the one that suggested his money had gone somewhere other than hospital bills and school fees. He opened the laptop. What he found confirmed his worst suspicions and revealed something worse. The spreadsheet was more detailed than he had realized. It listed not just his payments, but dozens of others, names he didn't recognize, amounts that ranged from $50 to $5,000. Each entry was coded with initials and dates and brief notes. LC, Seattle, lonely, father dead, easy mark. That was him. LC, Liam Carter. No, Foster, they had gotten his name wrong. But they had gotten everything else right. Lonely, easy mark. He scrolled through the other entries. There were patterns, the same story repeated with variations. A woman in need, a sick relative, a child to support. A pregnancy, sometimes real, sometimes invented. Men from America, from England, from Australia, from Germany, all of them sending money to women they had never met, all of them believing they had found something real. The total at the bottom of the spreadsheet made Liam's vision blur. 847,326. That was what this operation had collected in the past 3 years. $847,000 extracted from lonely men around the world, funneled through accounts that Liam couldn't trace. His contribution was listed near the bottom, $12,400. Less than 2% of the total, a small fish in a very large pond. he had been nothing to them. A source of income, a mark, a lonely man in Seattle who had fallen for a story because he needed so desperately to believe. Liam closed the laptop. His hands were shaking again. But this time, the shaking wasn't from shock. It was from something colder. Anger. The days that followed existed in a strange limbo between revelation and reckoning. Liam didn't leave. He should have. Every rational part of his brain screamed at him to book a flight, to cut his losses, to escape before something worse happened. But he couldn't make himself go. Part of it was the money. He had spent most of his savings getting here. His credit cards were nearly maxed. A last-minute flight home would cost more than he had, and the thought of calling Alex or June to ask for help felt like admitting a defeat he wasn't ready to accept. But mostly it was something else, something harder to explain. He needed to understand, not just Maya's story, which she had told him, but the system she was trapped in, the machinery that had turned her desperation into his exploitation, the men behind the curtain who had orchestrated everything. He needed to know who Vince was, and he needed to know who Rico was, because those names had come up again and again in Maya's story, and Liam had a feeling they weren't finished with him yet. Over the next few days, Liam learned more about the ecosystem that had consumed his money and his hope. Investigators would later piece together the full picture from digital records, testimony, and forensic accounting. But Liam got his education the hard way, through observation, through conversation, through the slow dawning horror of understanding exactly what he had wandered into. Vince was the architect. His full name was Vincent Delgado Reyes, 43 years old, Manila-born, educated at a provincial college where he studied business administration before dropping out to pursue what he called entrepreneurial opportunities. Those opportunities, as it turned out, were women. Vince had started in the early 2010s when the combination of smartphones, cheap internet, and global loneliness created a new kind of marketplace. He recognized before most people did that there was money to be made connecting attractive Filipino women with lonely foreign men. Lots of money. His first venture was a dating site, legitimate or at least legal. He recruited women from provinces around the country, photographed them, created profiles, and charged men subscription fees to message them. Some of those connections led to real relationships. Most led nowhere. All of them generated revenue. But Vince was ambitious. He saw that the real money wasn't in dating. It was in fantasy, in selling men not just companionship, but the dream of companionship, the illusion of love, carefully constructed and endlessly monetized. He expanded into what he called relationship management. His team of women would engage with foreign men on dating apps and social media. They build connections over weeks and months, creating elaborate backstories and emotional bonds. And then gradually, they would introduce financial need into the relationship. A sick relative, a broken phone, school fees for a child. Each request was small at first, reasonable, the kind of thing a good man would help with without question. Then the requests grew larger, and more frequent, and more urgent. The women were coached on exactly what to say. Vince ran training sessions where he taught them the psychology of their marks, how to identify vulnerable men, how to build trust, how to create artificial scarcity that made the men feel special, chosen, needed. Investigators would later discover a private chat room where Vince distributed his instructions. The messages read like business memos. Always make him feel like he's rescuing you. Men need to be heroes. Give them someone to save. Never ask for money directly. Let him offer first, then act reluctant to accept. Gratitude is more profitable than demand. If he starts asking too many questions, distract him with intimacy. Send photos, schedule video calls, make him forget his doubts. The pregnancy angle works best with older marks, men over 35 who don't have children. It creates urgency. It makes them commit. The system was remarkably effective. Vince's operation had grown from a handful of women working out of his apartment to a network of over 50 performers spread across Metro Manila and the surrounding provinces. They generated close to $1 million a year in transfers from foreign men who believed they were in love. Most of the women were trapped in the same way Maya was trapped. They had debts to Vince they could never fully repay. They had contracts that gave him control over their digital identities. They had seen what happened to people who tried to leave, and they had Rico. If Vince was the architect, Rico was the enforcer. His full name was Ricardo Santos, 31 years old. Born in Tondo, one of Manila's poorest neighborhoods, raised by a grandmother who died when he was 12. He had survived on the streets by learning early that violence was a currency that never lost its value. Rico worked for Vince as a collector, driver, and general problem solver. When a woman tried to hide earnings, Rico found them. When a client got too attached and tried to visit unannounced, Rico discouraged them. When someone threatened to go to the police, Rico made sure they understood the consequences. He wasn't a monster. Not exactly. He was practical, efficient. A man who had learned that sentiment was a luxury the poor couldn't afford. "We do what we must to survive," he once told a neighbor in the alley behind his boarding house. Everyone in this country does. The difference is some of us are honest about it. To Vince, Rico was an asset, reliable, discreet, worth every peso of his salary. To Maya, Rico was a constant threat, a reminder that her life was not her own. She had seen him break Joy's arm. She had seen other women disappear after crossing him. She knew that whatever affection Vince might show her, Rico was always waiting in the shadows. To Rico, Maya was product, nothing more. A revenue source to be managed and protected, and if necessary, discarded. Liam would meet Rico soon enough. But first, he had to contend with the truth. The question that haunted him during those limbo days was simple but unanswerable. Was Maya a victim or a perpetrator? The evidence pointed both ways. On one hand, she had lied to him systematically. She had manipulated his emotions, exploited his loneliness, extracted thousands of dollars under false pretenses. She had invented a pregnancy to compel him to travel halfway around the world. She had done all of this knowingly, deliberately, with the kind of calculated precision that suggested experience and training. On the other hand, she had been forced into this life by circumstances beyond her control. She had been exploited herself, her body and image commodified by men who saw her as nothing but a source of income. She was raising a child who wasn't hers, because her sister had been trapped in her own form of modern slavery. She was controlled by contracts she didn't understand and enforced by violence she couldn't escape. Which truth mattered more? Which Maya was real? Liam didn't know. And in some ways, the not knowing was worse than any certainty would have been. The pregnancy evidence complicated everything further. During his exploration of the laptop, Liam had found the medical records Maya had mentioned. The positive pregnancy test dated May 9th, 2019, the ultrasound photograph with 5 weeks penciled in the corner. The follow-up appointment scheduled for June. But he also found something else. Messages between Maya and a woman named Elena, apparently another performer in Vince's network. "I don't know what to do," Maya had written. "The test is positive, but I don't think I can keep it." "Talk to Vince," Elena replied. "He's dealt with this before. There are clinics." The conversation continued over several days. Maya expressing doubt and fear. Elena offering practical advice. Vince's name appearing occasionally as the authority to consult, the person who would ultimately decide what happened. Then, on June 12th, a final message from Maya. "It's gone. I started bleeding last night. Elena, I don't know if I'm relieved or destroyed." So the miscarriage was real. But what about the pregnancy itself? Had it been genuine? Or had it been manufactured to manipulate Liam? The medical records looked authentic, but Liam had no way to verify them. And even if they were real, the question of paternity remained unanswered. Maya had admitted she wasn't sure who the father was. She had chosen to believe it was Liam's because she wanted it to be true. But wanting something didn't make it real. The more Liam learned, the less he understood. Every answer generated new questions. Every truth contained contradictions. He had come to the Philippines looking for love and found instead a maze of deception so complex that he couldn't tell where the lies ended and the reality began. If this story is hitting you the way it's hitting me, if you're feeling the weight of Liam's confusion and Maya's impossible position, take a moment right now, like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. These stories don't tell themselves, and your support helps us bring them to light, because what happens next is where everything falls apart. July 20th, 2019. 7 days after Liam's arrival. 11:47 p.m. The knock on the door was not polite. 3 heavy thuds that shook the frame. Then a voice low and hard speaking in Tagalog. Maya's face went pale. She looked at Liam with an expression he had never seen before. Fear. "Who is it?" Liam asked. "Stay here," Maya said. "Don't say anything. Let me handle this." She went to the door. Liam heard her speaking rapidly in Tagalog, her voice tight and pleading. The response was a laugh. Not amused. Derisive. The door pushed open. Rico was exactly what Liam had feared. Compact, hard. Built like a man who had learned to fight in places where fighting was survival. His hand was the size of a catcher's mitt, and his face had the weathered look of someone who had seen too much and felt too little. Behind him stood another man, younger, nervous, holding a folder of papers. "So this is the American," Rico said in English. His accent was thick, but his meaning was clear. "The one who came all this way for love." He laughed again. The sound made Liam's skin crawl. "I don't want any trouble," Liam said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. "Trouble?" Rico stepped into the room, his eyes moving over the space like a predator assessing territory. "No trouble, just business. You understand business, yes? American men always understand business." He gestured to the younger man, who opened the folder and withdrew several sheets of paper. Rico took them and held them out toward Liam. "You have been enjoying Maya's company," Rico said. "For many months. Messages, calls, money. Now you come here in person. Very romantic. Get to the point. The point." Rico's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The point is that Maya works for Mr. Vince. Everything she does, everywhere she goes, it belongs to Mr. Vince, including the money you sent. I sent that money to help her nephew. Yes, very generous, but generosity has costs. Mr. Vince invested in Maya. Training, equipment, marketing. He expects a return on that investment. And you, American, you have been using his property without paying the full price." Liam felt his anger flare. "She's not property. In this country, everyone is property. Some people just don't know it yet." Rico thrust the papers toward Liam again. "This is a payment schedule. Mr. Vince is a reasonable man. He doesn't expect everything at once, but he expects something. You have taken from him. Now you will give back." Liam looked at the papers. They were typed in English, clearly intended for foreign eyes. The amounts were staggering. Monthly payments of $500 for the next 2 years. A total commitment of $12,000 plus interest, plus penalties for late payment. "This is extortion," Liam said. "This is business." Rico's voice hardened. "You can sign now and we leave as friends, or you can refuse and we discuss other arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" Rico didn't answer directly. Instead, he walked to the vanity table and picked up one of Maya's hairbrushes. He examined it casually like a man browsing in a store. "Maya has a nephew," he said. "Nice boy. Goes to school near the market. Sometimes I see him walking home alone. Children are so trusting, yes? They don't understand the world yet." Maya made a sound. A small, strangled cry. "You wouldn't," Liam said. "I wouldn't want to." Rico set the hairbrush down. "But business is business. Mr. Vince's interests must be protected. If the American doesn't want to cooperate, then perhaps the consequences fall on someone else, someone innocent. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Liam felt something cold settle in his chest. This wasn't a negotiation. This was coercion, pure and simple. And the leverage wasn't money or reputation. It was a 7-year-old boy. "I need time to think," Liam said. "Of course. Think. Sleep on it. We return tomorrow night for your answer." Rico moved toward the door, then stopped. He turned back to Liam with an expression that might have been curiosity. "I wonder," he said. "Did you really believe her? All those messages, all those promises? Did you really think a woman like Maya could love a man like you?" Liam didn't answer. "That's the thing about Americans," Rico continued. "You believe what you want to believe. You see a beautiful woman on a screen and you think, yes, this one is different. This one is real. This one wants me for who I am, not what I have." He shook his head slowly. "There is no real American. There is only what people need from each other. Maya needed your money. You needed her attention. Everyone got what they wanted. The only problem is you forgot to pay the full bill." He left. The younger man followed. The door closed with a click that sounded final. Maya collapsed onto the bed. She was shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know he would come here. I didn't know they would threaten Nino." Liam stood in the middle of the room, the payment schedule still clutched in his hand. His mind was racing through options, none of them good. He could pay, sign the papers, commit to years of financial obligation to men who would probably never stop asking for more. He could run, leave tonight, get to the airport, max out whatever credit he had left, fly home, and never look back. But then what would happen to Nino, to Maya? He could go to the police, report the extortion, the threats, the whole operation. But this was a foreign country where he didn't speak the language and didn't know the rules, where Vince probably had connections and Liam had none, or he could fight. The thought came unbidden, dangerous. He pushed it away, but it kept returning. These men had threatened a child. They had built an empire on exploiting vulnerable women and lonely men. They operated with impunity because no one ever stood up to them. What if someone did? "Liam," Maya's voice cut through his thoughts. "You can't fight them. I've seen what happens to people who try. You have to either pay or leave. There's no other option. There's always another option." "No?" Maya stood and grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Listen to me. Rico is not just a debt collector. He's killed people. Not many, not often, but when he has to. Vince keeps him on a leash most of the time, but if you push him too far..." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "So what am I supposed to do?" Liam asked. "Pay money I don't have to protect a child I've never met from men who will probably just keep asking for more?" "Yes. That's exactly what you're supposed to do, because the alternative is worse." Liam looked at her. At this woman who had lied to him, manipulated him, extracted thousands of dollars from him under false pretenses. At this woman who was also trapped, exploited, threatened. He thought about his father's letters again, about kindness staying. He thought about the 7-year-old boy who dreamed of being a teacher. He thought about the kind of man he wanted to be. "I'm not signing anything tonight," he said finally. "Tomorrow we'll figure something out. Maybe there's a way to negotiate. Maybe I can talk to Vince directly." Maya shook her head. "Vince doesn't negotiate. He takes." "Then we'll find another way." "There is no other way. There has to be." Maya looked at him for a long moment. In her eyes he saw something that might have been pity, or might have been something else. Something that, under different circumstances, might have been the beginning of something real. "You really are a good man," she said quietly. "That's the problem. Good men don't survive in this world." Liam didn't sleep that night. He sat in the armchair and watched the door, half expecting Rico to return. His mind churned through scenarios and possibilities, each one worse than the last. Outside, the sounds of the pension house settled into silence. A dog barked somewhere. A motorbike passed on the street below. The ordinary noises of a world that had no idea what was happening in room 7. Maya lay on the bed pretending to sleep. Liam could tell from her breathing that she was awake too. They existed in separate silences. Two people, trapped in the same small space, bound together by circumstance and deception and something that might have been connection once, before the lies stripped it down to bone. Tomorrow, Liam told himself. Tomorrow I'll figure this out. He had no way of knowing that tomorrow would bring violence, that within 24 hours, a man would be bleeding on the floor and his own hands would be covered in blood. He had no way of knowing that the solution he was searching for would be worse than any problem he had faced. He had no way of knowing that some knots can only be cut. July 20th passed in a haze of whispered arguments and desperate planning. Liam tried to find a way out. He called his bank in Seattle, attempting to increase his credit limit. Denied. He searched online for emergency loans, for wire transfer services, for anything that might generate the money Rico demanded. Nothing worked. His resources were exhausted. He had given everything to Maya over 16 months, and now there was nothing left to give. Maya, for her part, reached out to contacts she thought might help. Other women in Vince's network, a cousin in Mindanao, even Elena, the friend from the chat logs. Everyone had the same advice, pay or run. No one had alternatives. By evening, Liam had accepted the impossible truth. He couldn't pay, he couldn't run without abandoning Maya and Nino to whatever consequences would follow. And he couldn't negotiate with men who saw threats as conversation starters. He was trapped. At 11:47 p.m., Rico returned. This time he didn't knock. The door simply opened and he was there, filling the frame with his compact bulk. The younger man from the night before wasn't with him. Rico had come alone. "Have you made your decision, American?" Liam stood near the window. Maya sat on the bed, her hands twisted in her lap. The room felt smaller than it had the night before. The walls closer, the air thicker. "I can't pay," Liam said. "I don't have the money. I've given you everything I have." Rico's expression didn't change. "That's unfortunate. I can maybe get a few hundred more from my sister. But $12,000, monthly payments, all of that, it's impossible. I don't have it." "Then we have a problem." Rico stepped into the room. He moved slowly, deliberately, like a man who had all the time in the world. His eyes scanned the space, cataloging everything. The laptop on the desk, Maya's bag in the corner, Liam's carry-on near the door. "What's in the bag?" Rico asked. "Clothes. Nothing valuable?" Rico walked to the carry-on and unzipped it. He rifled through the contents with casual disregard, tossing shirts and underwear onto the floor. At the bottom, he found what he was looking for. The passport sleeve where Liam had hidden his emergency cash. $300. It was everything Liam had left. Rico counted the bills, then looked at Liam with something like amusement. "This is what you brought? To start a new life with your beautiful girlfriend? I told you. I gave her everything else." "Yes, you did." Rico pocketed the money. "But this isn't enough. Not even close." "Then what do you want me to do?" Rico considered the question. His eyes moved to Maya, lingered there for a moment, then returned to Liam. "You could work off the debt," he said slowly. "Maya knows how. She could teach you. There are markets for everything, American. Even middle-aged men with sad eyes. Some clients have specific tastes." The suggestion hung in the air. Liam felt his stomach turn. "No." "No?" Rico raised an eyebrow. "Pride is expensive. Are you sure you can afford it?" I said no. Something shifted in Rico's demeanor. The amusement drained from his face, replaced by something colder, harder. "Then we're done talking." He moved fast. Faster than Liam expected. One moment he was standing by the carry-on. The next, his hand was around Liam's throat, pushing him back against the window. "You think you can come here?" Rico hissed. his breath hot on Liam's face. Take from us, use our women, and then leave without paying. This isn't America. There are no police coming to save you. There is only me and what I decide to do. Liam clawed at Rico's hand. He couldn't breathe. The pressure on his throat was immense, crushing. I will make an example of you, Rico continued, so everyone knows what happens to foreigners who don't pay their debts. Maya screamed something in Tagalog. Rico turned toward her, loosening his grip just slightly. It was enough. Liam drove his knee upward into Rico's groin. The blow landed hard. Rico grunted and stumbled back, releasing Liam's throat. What followed was chaos. Liam swung wildly, connecting with Rico's jaw. Rico recovered faster than seemed possible, throwing a punch that caught Liam in the ribs. The impact sent pain radiating through his chest. They grappled, crashed into the armchair. The ring light toppled, its glow spinning crazily across the walls. Maya was screaming, words Liam couldn't understand, pleas or warnings or both. Datu 2 a.m., July 21st, 2019. A lamp went over. The bulb shattered against the tile, and glass scattered across the floor in a thin red line where the light caught it. Rico's shoe crunched through the fragments as he advanced. Liam backed up. His hand found the bedside table, found something cold and metallic. A utility knife. The kind used for opening packages. Clean blade. Ordinary handle. He didn't remember picking it up. Later, he would try to reconstruct the moment, try to understand the sequence of decisions that led from grabbing the knife to what came next. He would never succeed. Some moments exist outside of memory, outside of reason. They simply happen. Rico lunged at him. Liam's arm moved. Violence is not cinematic. The movies lie about that. There are no choreographed sequences, no dramatic pauses, no meaningful looks exchanged between combatants. There is only chaos and fear and the desperate animal need to survive. The knife enters Rico's abdomen. It doesn't slide in cleanly like in the movies. It catches on fabric, on muscle, on something that resists. Liam pushes harder without meaning to. The blade goes deeper. Rico makes a sound. Not a scream. Not a groan. Something worse. A wet, surprised exhalation, like air escaping from a punctured tire. The sound of a body realizing it has been broken. He staggers backward. His hands go to his stomach, pressing against the wound. Blood seeps between his fingers, dark and thick. You... Rico's voice is different now, smaller, confused. You actually... He falls against the vanity. His weight sends bottles and brushes and makeup palettes crashing to the floor. The mirror cracks. Light bulbs shatter in a cascade of breaking glass. Then he slides down. Slowly. His back leaving a red smear on the wood. Maya is on her knees beside him before Liam can process what has happened. Her hands press against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. Her face is a mask of disbelief. "Call someone," she shouts. "Call an ambulance, call someone." Liam stands frozen. The knife is still in his hand. His fingers won't release it. They've locked around the handle like they've forgotten how to let go. Blood on the floor. Blood on Maya's fingers. Blood spreading across the tile in a pool that catches the light from the spinning ring lamp and reflects it back like something alive. The smell hits him then. Iron and hot flesh and something chemical underneath. Maybe from the broken perfume bottles. The smell fills his mouth, coats the back of his throat. His heart hammers. Each beat feels like an explosion in his chest. He thinks of all the money he sent, of all the lies he believed, of his father's letters advising caution, advising him to look for kindness. He kept his anger tucked neat and small his whole life, just like his father taught him. Until now. He feels a wild, animal guilt that makes his limbs useless. His knees want to buckle. His vision wants to tunnel. His body wants to collapse and let the world disappear. People are screaming now, not just Maya. Neighbors. Someone is banging on the walls, shouting in Tagalog. The pension house has awakened, and it knows something terrible has happened. Maya yells at him again. Drop the knife. Call for help. Do something. Liam drops the knife. It clatters against the tile. He backs away, 1 step, 2, until his shoulders hit the wall and he can retreat no further. Rico's eyes are still open. They find Liam across the room. There's something in them that might be hatred or might be fear or might be simply the dawning recognition that this is how it ends. You killed me, Rico whispers. The words come out bloody, bubbling. You actually killed me. Liam doesn't know if that's true. He doesn't know if Rico will live or die. He doesn't know anything anymore except that the room is tilting and the world has changed, and nothing will ever be the same. The next hours exist in fragments. Maya making phone calls in rapid Tagalog, someone arriving with towels, pressing them against Rico's wound, the distant wail of sirens growing closer. And then, in a moment of panic that Liam would regret for the rest of his life, a decision. Rico stopped breathing at 1:47 a.m. Maya's cousin, who had arrived to help, checked for a pulse and found nothing. The towels were soaked through. The pool of blood had spread to cover most of the floor. He's dead, the cousin said. We need to get rid of the body. Liam should have refused, should have called the police himself, should have done 100 things differently. But he was in shock, his mind operating on some primitive level that recognized only threat and survival. Behind the pension house was a large blue water drum, the kind used for collecting rainwater. It was mostly empty. They wrapped Rico's body in sheets. They used duct tape to seal the edges, as if they could contain what had happened with adhesive and plastic. They carried him through the back door, through the narrow alley where Liam had smashed his head against the wall just days before, and they folded him into the drum. It was 2:34 a.m. when they finished. Liam stood in the alley looking at the drum and felt something inside him break completely. Not his heart. That had broken already, something deeper. His sense of himself as a decent person. His belief that he was the kind of man his father would have been proud of. He had come to the Philippines looking for love. He had found deception and violence and death. And now he was standing in an alley, looking at a drum that contained a human body and trying to figure out how his life had led him here. The police arrived at 3:23 a.m. A neighbor had called. Multiple neighbors, actually. The screaming, the sounds of fighting, then the commotion in the alley. Someone had seen them moving something heavy. Someone had put the pieces together. Liam was taken into custody without resistance. He sat in the back of the police car and stared at his hands, still stained with blood that had dried to a rusty brown. Maya was questioned separately. The cousin disappeared into the night before anyone could get her name, but by dawn the story had begun to spread. An American tourist, a local woman with a complicated history, a debt collector found dead in a water drum. The details were salacious enough to attract attention, tragic enough to inspire commentary. The press arrived before noon. They photographed the pension house, the alley, the drum being loaded onto a forensics truck. They found Liam's picture online, his dating app photo, and published it alongside headlines that made him sound like a monster. American kills Filipino man in love triangle gone wrong. Sex worker's foreign boyfriend murders debt collector. Tourist travels 8,000 miles for romance. Ends in bloodshed. The coverage made him monstrous in 2 paragraphs, sympathetic in 3. That was how these stories worked. People loved the shape of a fall. The legal process that followed was slow and grinding. Liam was charged with murder in the first degree. The prosecution argued premeditation, claiming he had armed himself with the utility knife before the confrontation began. The defense, a public attorney assigned to his case after the U.S. Embassy declined to intervene directly, argued self-defense. A man attacked in his room by an extortionist. A desperate act of survival. The trial lasted 3 months. It became a minor sensation in the local press. Another example of the complicated intersections between foreign tourists and the local economy of desire. Maya testified. She sat in the witness box with her hair pulled back and her voice steady, and she told the court about her life, about Vince and his operation, about the women who worked under contracts they couldn't escape, about Rico and his methods of enforcement, about Liam, who had been kind and foolish and ultimately dangerous. She did not try to make herself sympathetic. She did not ask for forgiveness. She simply told the truth, as much of it as she could bear to speak aloud and let the court decide what to do with it. "I lied to him," she said when the prosecutor asked about her relationship with Liam. "I manipulated him. I took his money under false pretenses, but I never wanted anyone to die. I never wanted any of this." The defense called expert witnesses who testified about the psychology of romance scams, about the isolation and desperation experienced by victims, about the way prolonged manipulation could compromise judgment and impulse control. The prosecution called witnesses who had seen Liam in the days before the killing, who described him as agitated, angry, capable of violence, who suggested that a man who had traveled so far and lost so much might have been looking for revenge. In the end, the judge split the difference. Liam Foster was convicted of manslaughter, not murder. The verdict acknowledged the extenuating circumstances while recognizing that a man had died and someone had to be held responsible. This court finds the defendant guilty of a tragic collision of deceit and impulse, the judge said in his ruling. The victim was engaged in criminal activity. The defendant was a victim of prolonged fraud. Neither fact excuses the taking of a human life, but both facts must be weighed in determining the appropriate sentence. Liam was sentenced to 12 years in a Philippine prison. With good behavior, he could be eligible for parole in 8. He stood motionless as the sentence was read. He had expected worse. He had prepared himself for life imprisonment, for dying in a foreign cell thousands of miles from everything he had ever known. 12 years felt almost merciful. But mercy, he would learn, was relative. The aftermath of the trial spread outward in ripples. Vince was arrested 2 months after Liam's conviction. The investigation into Rico's death had uncovered the financial records, the chat logs, the systematic exploitation of vulnerable women and lonely men. He was charged with money laundering, coercion, and operating an illegal enterprise. He pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for testimony against other members of his network. Inspector Alonso, the lead investigator on the case, gave an interview that was quoted in newspapers across the region. "What we see here is the intersection of structural poverty and the architecture of online demand," she said. "Women in desperate circumstances, men in lonely circumstances, and a system that profits from connecting them in ways that exploit both. The violence was inevitable. Someone was always going to get hurt." Maya returned to court for a civil suit related to unpaid wages from Vince's operation. She testified via video link, her face partially obscured, her voice calm. She won a small settlement that would never fully compensate for what she had endured. There were custody questions about Nino. Maya's sister Maria had finally returned from Saudi Arabia, broken and exhausted from years of exploitation. She wanted her son back. Maya wanted to keep him. The courts, as courts do, took their time deciding. And then Maya disappeared. Not dramatically, not with fanfare or explanation. She simply stopped appearing at the address she had given to investigators, stopped answering the phone number on file, stopped existing in any way that official records could track. Before she left, she pinned a note to the wall in room 7. The pension house had remained empty since the killing, the room sealed as a crime scene, and then abandoned when no one wanted to rent a space where violence had occurred. The note said only, "I am sorry." It was folded into 3 pieces. The ink was smudged, as if she had written it in haste or in tears. Investigators would later learn that she had fled to a relative in Iloilo, on another island, under a new name. She was hiding not from justice, but from the remnants of Vince's network, from men who might want revenge for what her involvement had cost them. She was hiding to protect Nino, and perhaps to protect the one small private thing she had left, the possibility of starting over. Months passed. The story faded from the news. Other scandals emerged, other tragedies, other examples of the countless ways human beings find to hurt each other and themselves. Liam served his time. The Philippine prison system was harsh, but he survived. He learned to keep his head down, to avoid trouble, to exist in a kind of suspended animation where each day was exactly like the one before. He thought about Maya often, about whether she had ever loved him even a little, about whether any part of their connection had been real. He never reached a conclusion. Some questions don't have answers. Then one day, a video surfaced. It appeared on an obscure corner of the internet, shared by someone who recognized Maya from the trial coverage. The video was grainy, 2 minutes long, clearly shot on a phone by someone who didn't know they were being recorded. It showed a beach. Quiet. Empty, except for two figures. A woman with her hair wrapped in a towel, standing at the water's edge. A child, maybe 9 or 10 years old, playing in the surf. The woman watches the child, and then without warning, she smiles. Not a performance smile. Not the calculated expression Liam had seen in the LOLA BLAZE photographs. A real smile. Small and private and full of something that looked, from a distance, like peace. The caption on the video read, "For Nino." Liam watched the video in the prison's computer room. He watched it 3 times, studying the woman's face, trying to reconcile this image with everything he knew about her. And then, for the first time in a long while, he wept. Not the weeping of absolution. He knew he would never be absolved. A man had died because of him. Nothing would change that. It was the weeping of someone who recognizes the cost of his choices, who understands finally that the world is more complicated than he ever imagined, that good people do terrible things and terrible people do good things, and most of us exist somewhere in the middle, making choices we don't fully understand for reasons we can't fully explain. Maya had lied to him, she had manipulated him, she had taken his money and his hope and his belief in human connection. But she had also been trapped, exploited, threatened. She had done what she had to do to survive, and survival sometimes requires things that look from the outside like cruelty. Who was the villain? Who was the victim? The question refused to resolve. A woman who worked and lied to survive? A man who loved and then killed in a lunging panic? A system that monetized intimacy and taught people to barter truth for bread. When a man crosses the world for love and finds the economy of desire instead, who pays for the collision? Everyone, it turns out. Everyone pays. The story ends where it began. In a room that smells like blood and hairspray, in an airport at 3 a.m., where a man reads a message and chooses a different destiny than the one he planned. The rain kept coming that night in Manila. The plane lights burned like occasional stars. Somewhere else, a ring light flickered and a woman laughed, and the world, indifferent and small, continued to turn. What would you have done in Liam's position? Was this justice? Or just another tragedy dressed in legal clothes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know, do you blame Liam? Do you blame Maya? Or do you blame something bigger than both of them? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. True crime story. 247 brings you stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Hit that notification bell. And remember, the next time someone online seems too good to be true, they probably are. Some stories don't have heroes. Some stories don't have villains. Some stories just have people doing the best they can with the options they have until the options run out and something breaks. This was one of those stories. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't fall in love with the photograph.